weekend, everybody. My name is Mick Barraza. I'm with Ghostteq, and welcome to another segment of the show, which we're going to be talking about gear and all the equipment that's used in the field of ghost hunting and paranormal investigating. Today, I'm only going to concentrate on three main components of the gear, and that is basically your case, which is going to be used to in-house all of your equipment, which is your cameras and all and so forth. A camera, which can be digital, camcorder, or whichever, and audio recorder, okay? These three things is what I'm going to concentrate on the most. I know there's so much gear out there in today's society that so many of them out there use, and which has a wide variety of range that some of us are more comfortable with, and that can be anywhere from cameras, tripods, cases, K2 meters, EMF readers, thermometers, spirit box, which, you know, some of the people out there have a little disbelief or are not too kind on, you know, how those are being used, but some of them have actually got some pretty interesting data collected from that. My belief is with the spirit box, of course there's different names for the spirit box, but there's plenty of teams out there that still use them. But what it is basically is a frequency hopper, and it channels from one to another, catching. Say for instance, when you turn on your radio and you're flipping the dial, and you're flipping through it, and you hear bits and pieces of wording here and there. Well, that's basically what the spirit box does. In essence, is what it does is it channels, it skips through different frequencies. They say that it picks out particular words. Say, for instance, if you're asking questions during the case, and you're asking questions to an entity or spirit, whichever, and you're asking who is here, and if you're running that device, the spirit box, whatever, and you're running that, and you're asking the questions, and as this channel is hopping through different frequencies, it might answer here, you know, certain words, single syllables, whatever, that'll tell, might make connection as to where they're at, who they are, what happened to them, whatever, and so forth. But in any event, I didn't want to go into that because I wanted to try and concentrate on just these three parts here, like I was saying initially, and that's the case. And you don't really need to invest a whole lot in your gear, but when you're first starting out, as a beginner, I would suggest that you would get you a case. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Actually, this right here, I managed to pick up quite a few of them over at Sam's Wholesalers, which is Walmart affiliated. And these cases, they have, as you can see here, it has the foam padding and backing right here. What this is right here is these little squares, pieces, pegs that you can pull out, and you're able to insert your camera in certain positions so that it sinks in, and so that when you close it, it'll secure it so your equipment doesn't move. You know, and that's depending on how much equipment. This one here probably can hold a good couple of cameras, an EMF reader, K2 meter, audio recorder, and so forth. Some people use them a lot more for, you know, mini tripods, your business cards, you know, that if you're using to, of course, some people put those in their pocket. You know, if you have equipment vests, which some people do also, they carry the vest, but that's basically if you're using on-hands equipment that you're going to be using in the field, say like a camera, audio recorder, batteries that you're using for supply for the time being, because we all know that when you're going in the field, one thing that you're going to be using a constant amount of, and is batteries. The reason why is because, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the field, is that when you're you're using equipment in the field, whether it's a residence or wherever, a place of business or wherever, the gear has a tendency of dying out, and that's because, see what happens, spirits supposedly they draw from the energy of the battery cells in order to make communication with you, and they'll drain it out. And this has happened it happens rather regularly with a lot of teams and investigators and so forth, that they'll go into certain cases, and you go there geared up and everything. You go in there with like 20 some batteries, and within that hour's time they're all dead. And that's not necessarily because your equipment drains them fast, but because the spirits themselves, they use that form of energy so that they can communicate with you, and that therefore drains your resources, whatever charges your batteries, whatever charges your clock, your cameras, your audio recorders, or whatever it is that's applied off of battery usage. The cameras themselves, this one here is a digital camera. It's made by Bell and Howell. It also includes night vision. These here do not necessarily have tapes. Okay, these are recorded directly into an internal drive, which is really a good positive, on a positive note, because you don't have to worry about cassettes. The older camcorders, which I have quite a few of them, which are mostly Sony's, which I prefer personally because Sony has built in all of their cameras, their camcorders has night vision already in the cameras, which is a big plus. Now, if you're using an additional source which will help you to see better in the darkness, a lot of us use IR lights, infrared lights, and those are usually the small, maybe like a 3x3 square that attaches to your camera or attaches to a tripod. Say, for instance, if you're attaching your camera to a tripod for still motion so that you don't necessarily have to carry it around, you attach it to your tripod, and then there's like a bar that connects from your camera to, it has an extension that you can attach your IR lamp, and that gives you an even added feature of more infrared, where in essence, some of the cameras, like one in particular, one of my Sonys has regular night vision, and then it has super night vision, which increases the IR in the camera, so it makes it even better, which I won't even have to use the IR lamps because it has that already built into the camera itself. But they're really good because I've only used this one particular kind of camera a couple of times because I'm more comfortable using the Sonys, but that's just a preference for myself anyway. But if you come across a camcorder that you are, someone suggests to you as being a good product and it works rather well, and it has the HD and it records well and plays back well without a whole lot of course, there are other circumstances. It depends on the user, how familiarized they are with the camera. Because you get somebody that's, has a camera and they're going like this. You get what you put into it. If you're using it radically to filming, that's exactly what you're going to get in return. Now, not necessarily, because I know a lot of filmmakers, camera crews, and those that are familiar with camcorders and cameras, they know that they're going to pan either right or left when they're viewing through their viewfinder, which has an adjustable lens, and they're panning left or right, and as they're doing so, they're enabling to make sure that they see everything within the viewing range of the camera. Okay, which also has a zoom in and out lens. There's also attachments, of course, like this one here, which I put on initially here. These are extra lenses, which gives you that added exposure. But anyway, our next piece that I'm going to be talking about is the audio recorder. Okay, now audio recorders have changed so much drastically over the years. I remember back in the 90s, we were using cassette recorders. Like I had stated before in a previous segment, it was an RCA audio recorder, but it was a cassette. The problem with the cassette recorders back then, not very many people were aware, but we became aware of it not too long after. And that is basically when you're doing recording, you're using that cassette for whichever segment that you're going to be doing your interview, your EVP sessions or whatever, and you're asking the questions, right? You're fine and dandy with all that, and you're playing it back, and you're getting all your data that you're collected, and you're jotting it down so that you're keeping record of everything that you collected. Now, keep in mind that that cassette that you used, you don't want to use it again. Personally, I wouldn't use it again. The reason being is because when it comes to cassette recorders, sure, you can rewind it and you can record over it. The only problem with that is, we found out, is that a lot of times when you're recording over a used tape, the information that you collect from the second session that you started over is going to be fair. It's not going to be great, because when you play it back, a lot of the stuff that you collected from the previous session has bleeded over into your new session. Now, sometimes that doesn't happen, but there are times that it might happen, and that's because it's a cassette. Cassettes, the way they are, is a film that's wrapped around a wheel, a little spinner, two spinners actually, that collects when it rewinds them forwards, whatever. But they record, that piece of film only records on 1/2 to 3/4 inches of that tape. The tape is only maybe 1/4 inch, less than 1/4 inch wide. And as it records that session, and you've used that same cassette over, the same information, what happens is that information bleeds over onto the very same tape. So you're going to get mixed information. It's not going to be very effective, especially when you're collecting and you want to present that information to your client. The best thing you could do is, if you're using a cassette recorder, mind you, is to use a fresh, always using a fresh cassette. Now, I would suggest using this particular kind. Well, you can use any kind, basically. There's a lot of them out there. This one happens to be an Olympus. And what it is, the reason why I like this particular kind here is that because it has a retracting USB card stick here, which enables you to plug it into your laptop or your PC, your desktop PC, and you can plug it in, and it uploads all your information from here onto your PC. When you're done with it, you just pull it out, close it back up, see, and it's ready to use. And of course, you just press play and all that, and what happens is the laptop recognizes the new hardware and it pulls the information from it. Now, there's software out there for these particular, for most anyway. This one here uses a particular software, for the life of me. Anyway, there's two particular kinds of software. Some of them are very effective more than others, that enable you to adjust and analyze and go over all the data that you collected with an audio recorder. The only problem with that is, if you're just starting out, I would just play over the information and keep it and file it accordingly. Don't take that information and enhance it. The reason why I'm saying that is because if you enhance anything that you enhance, you take a chance of corrupting it. What I mean by that is, say for an audio file, for an example, if you happen to increase the level of audio, I mean, see, there's software that enables you to eliminate background noise, which is good, because it concentrates specifically on whatever you're recording, and you're able to analyze that and enhance that, but you don't want to enhance it to the point where it infects it and the information is corrupt and it's not exactly what you want to hear, because then what happens is, say for instance, if you're hearing somebody be saying something, and if you enhance that, it could corrupt it to a point where it's making you think you're hearing something even more than what you weren't hearing initially, which is basically, in other words, it's like matrixing. Matrixing is a form, it's a word for paranormal investigators, ghost hunters use all the time, or in other words, apophenia. And that basically is what you're seeing or you're hearing something that's basically not there. Say for an example, I'm going to give you a good example. When you walk outside and you look at the clouds, and everybody does this, kids, teenagers, adults, senior citizens, we all look up in the sky and we see clouds. And you look up there and you say, gee, that looks like a dog, that looks like a cat, that looks like a clown. Well, that basically it's matrixing, because your brain is trying to put together a puzzle so that you can recognize it for something that you already know, because it calculates, it draws the information in from what you're viewing and puts it together so that it's explainable to your mind. And that's basically what matrixing is. So in that essence, what you want to do, say for example, one problem, one thing that happens a lot when it comes to matrixing, and that is photos, as in with the cameras. Whether it's video or whether it's just photo shots of a digital camera. And what happens is, if you've taken a picture of something and you're posting all that on your computer so that you can analyze it better, and you're looking at it, and say like it's an 8x10 and you're looking at it and it's dark and you see, for example, orbs, which is basically a small cylindrical shape, and you're looking at it and you see this sphere, and you want to enhance that, so you're saying, okay, it looks like there's something there. So what you do is you enhance the photo with your software, whether it's photo editing or whatever, and you enhance it by enlarging the picture, and what you're basically doing is you're distorting it, because what then happens is you're pixelating the picture. And what happens after that is your mind, it's already looking at a certain object, and you're trying to analyze it so that it looks something familiar for your mind to make connection with. And as in doing so, when you're enlarging it and you're pixelating the picture and you're basically distorting it to a point where you're saying, okay, this looks like a face, this looks like a lady, this looks like a person in a dress, or a person with a tall hat, whatever. But in essence, it's just a tree or a bush, a bug. We all make those mistakes here. It's, many of us have made a mistake. I made those mistakes a lot when I first started, when I was analyzing, when I was learning more and more about orbs. There's a lot of material out there that will help explain to you how to analyze photography, how to analyze pictures, how to analyze audio when it comes to paranormal investigating. And that's just not regular photography, because there's cases, there's schools, there's literature, there's instructional material out there that help you learn about photography as well. But it gets more in depth if you're looking for literature that helps explain how to analyze a photo if you're in paranormal investigating, if you're a ghost hunter and you want to learn more about how to analyze the materials that will make you more aware of what your findings are, and you're not going to jump to conclusions, because you don't necessarily want to do that when you're sharing it with a co-worker, co-member, or whatever, or the client, and you're presenting it to them. Excuse me. and you're presenting it to them, and they're thinking, that's not what I see. Okay. On the other hand, they might see that if, for an example, if you happen to present it to them and say, I see a demon in this picture, don't you? And what's going to happen? What's going to happen is you've already entered that thought into your client's mind, into your co-member's mind, your founder's mind, investigator, whoever is with you, and they'll be looking at it the same way because you've already instilled that thought into their head. So what you want to do is take that data and you present it to a co-member or your client or whatever, and you say you want to present it to them and say, look here, this is what I found here. Take a look at it and let me know what you see. Okay? That is the proper procedure to present your case. When you're presenting data to somebody, present it to it in a method where you're asking them to tell you what they see. Not what you see, what they see. This enables it to be to make you a better and more proficient in the field. Now, I know there's plenty of investigators and ghost hunters out there that might not agree so well with what I'm saying because, if you're just starting out, it might not sound like the right thing to do because you're saying, look, if I see a face, they're going to see a face. You think? Well, that's what matrixing is. Orbs is the biggest, most highest misunderstood thing in the field. Why? Because it's easy to make that misconception that it's anything else but paranormal. And you know what? That's what it is. Because, there's so many things that fall into that category of being an orb, like moisture. Believe it or not, when you're taking a picture with a camera, let's say, for instance, you go on a case. Now, I'm going to tell you personally. When you go on a case, make a point of going on a case on a clear evening. Check your weather reports. Check your news channels, whatever. Find out what your weather is going to be for that evening. You want to find out in advance. You don't want to go out there when it's raining or it just got through raining or it happens to be a moist, damp day or damp evening. And the reason being is because if you do, that is going to infect all of your material, everything that you've taken pictures of. That's a lost case. The reason why I'm saying that is because the cameras cannot tell one way or the other, because the camera, the digital camera, the camcorder, whichever you're using in the field, if you're out there and it happens to be raining, of course I wouldn't be using camcorders in the rain to begin with because you want your equipment to get wet. And even if it didn't rain and it just happened to stop, you're still going to have the moisture in the air because that's what it is, moisture. After a fresh rain, there's still moisture in the air. And believe it or not, that camera will pick it up. It will. And when you look over your footage, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see all these dots in your film. And you're going to be saying, gosh, there's been a whole slew of ghosts out there because there must have been 15, 20 orbs in there. And all what you were really catching was rain, moisture, snow. Snow is another big thing that's, can affect your film or your camera. Also, like for an example, in this summer, which is coming up pretty soon, it's already hot out there as it is, but there's a lot of bugs in here. and you got bugs, you know what happens? Those little gnats, and they're flying everywhere. You know what happens? Those little bugs, they're flying around too. You know, and they don't necessarily know. I mean, bugs are going to fly wherever they're going to fly. If they just happen to be in front of your camera and you notice that and you're saying, and it's going around like so, you're going to be saying, oh, look at that orb. Look at that orb. It's you know, especially if you're asking, say for an example, you're asking questions, you're saying, hey, how you doing? And that thing happens to go this way and that, you're going to think, that thing responded to me. You know, don't let it fool you. Bugs is going to do, you know, you're going to be taking pictures of bugs, taking video of bugs. Another thing, dust. Believe it or not, it's everywhere. Dust is everywhere. It doesn't matter if you just clean your house or how clean your house you think it is, dust is in the air and it's going to float around in the air. Depending if you're walking from one direction to the other, you know what happens? That dust, it's so light, it follows the direction that you're going. If you happen to be waving your hand, there could be something there. That dust particle happens to be following the direction of your hand. All of these things you have to take in consideration for. And there's a lot of things out there that can be misconstrued as orbs or spirits. So what I would do, I'm going to give you a pointer. I don't have it with me right now, or I would show you. And that is to make yourself a little, a logbook, a photo logbook. Purposefully go out and take you some pictures if it happens to be raining outside. Take you some pictures. If it happens to be a sprinkler out there, take you some pictures. If you just happen to be dusting, or you know someone is in the house is dusting, do it on purpose. Swish some dust around. Take you some pictures. Okay? You see a lot of bugs out there, some gnats, take you some pictures. The reason being, if you do these, you collect all these pictures up and you log them in your book. And you notate them, what each of them is. Bugs, moisture, rain, snow, dust. This is a binder that you can go by, that you can look back on. So that way, later on in the future, you can always look back and you can make comparison. A lot of the times that you take pictures of other things, they might not match up, but for a good portion of them, they will. And you have something to follow through on when you do. And that's basically, you call it your own orb book. And this is something that you can look at and say, this is what dust is, this is what rain is, this is what moisture is, this is what snow is, this is what bugs are. Because there's a whole slew of things that falls into that scenario, like I was talking about, as being an orb. Okay. But in essence, like I was mentioning before I got a little sidetracked with that orb situation. But it was a very important thing that I wanted to bring attention to. But as for the gear, like I'm talking, when you're first starting out with gear, you don't have to buy every single piece of equipment out there. Gradually, depending on your income source, how much you have to spend here and there, don't spend your whole paycheck on a camera and this and this and that, because, we all have bills to pay, okay? We all have to eat. We have to buy, and all the necessities needed to survive. So, like I was saying, start small. Get you one or two pieces along with your case so that you can carry your gear, and leave it at that. Okay? So until next time, we get up with another segment of Ghostteq. We'll see you then. Make sure that you like us and subscribe to our channel. And we'll see you then, okay? Respect the spirit realm.